Mary Ellen Mark was born on March 20th, 1940 and died May 25th, 2015. She was an American photographer, and she was known for her photojournalism, documentary photography, and advertising photography. 18 collections of her work have been published and can be seen at galleries and museums worldwide. Her work has even been published in Life, Rolling Stone, The New Yorker, New York Times, and Vanity Fair, which are well-known publications. She even received a few awards for her photography. Mark often befriended the subjects of her photos. Most of her photos address social issues such as homelessness, drug addiction, prostitution, etc. She wanted to give people a look into the lives you normally don't see, and she often used children as a subject in many of her photos. One of her most notable works published is Streetwise. Streetwise was a 1983 series that started as an assignment from Life magazine, in which she was to capture the street kids of Seattle, Washington. At the time, it was known to be the most livable city. Tiny, whose real name is Erin Blackwell, was a 13-year-old girl who was a prostitute. Mark formed a friendship with her during that period and shows her as the subject of many photos she took for Streetwise. This image is called Tiny at the Amusement Park with Horsey. Tiny is the main subject. It's in black and white, and in the background you can tell this was photographed at a fair. She is holding a pony plushie with flowers but is making a sad face. Diffused lighting helps create a softer texture and helps emphasize the mood Mark wanted to capture. This work is important to the field of photography because Mark's goal was to bring to light homeless children who live in Seattle, even though Seattle was branded as the most livable city. Due to this image is ethically evaluative. I think Mark's approach, instead of just showing Tiny out on the street, was to put her in places where children typically are. She captured Tiny unhappy, while you usually find kids with laughter and happiness at a fair. It helps create a contrast between normal kids versus her. Knowing the background of Tiny, this image makes me feel as the photographer wanted to capture the bit of innocence, a little bit of childhood Tiny had left. She was forced to grow up fast due to being homeless and becoming a prostitute, so she hasn't quite had a cheerful life, and that is shown by the expression she makes in this photo. The significance of this work was to bring an awareness to not just the problem of kids who live in poverty in Seattle, but throughout America as well. Another well-known collection from Mark is her book called Ward 81. In 1975, a magazine assigned Mark to do a story on Oregon State Hospital. Oregon State Hospital was a mental institution for women. The women there are locked and are considered dangerous to themselves and others. This was after a year prior to her being there because she was photographing the cast and set of Milos Forman's 1975 adaptation of Ken Kesey's novel One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. She had promised to come back, and she was allowed to live with the patients for 36 days in February 1976. During that time, she got to know the patients while photographing them. This photo was shot in black and white, and the subject can be seen rolled into a ball on the bed. When people are in this position, it could be because they are experiencing pain, and the shadows and lighting help create a darker mood for this image. Like the last photo, I would say the photographic category this photo falls under is ethically evaluated and explanatory photography. I say this because she wanted to provide answers to those who know nothing about living in a ward. Showing what they go through and how they look like helps support this, but she also brings attention to how the women are treated in the facility and how being there makes them feel like they're trapped. The writer for Ward 81 even said, "We felt the erosion of our self-confidence. We were horrified at the thought of what we might become after a year or two in confinement and therapy on Ward 81. What makes this image significant and others in the book so you can see that this patient is enduring pain and suffering. Mark most likely wanted us to feel sympathetic for these patients, and I feel she achieved that because that is how I felt."